Hi everyone, I'm back. This is episode 2, and like I discussed in episode 1, and this episode I want to talk about making your own picks. When I just got started, I didn't want to order a big expensive set before I knew what I was doing or what I was getting myself into, so I decided to make some picks myself, and in this episode I'm going to demonstrate how I did that. They're probably not the best way, not the most efficient way, but it's the way that worked for me, so I thought I'd share that. The base that I'm going to use here is the saw blades that I bought. These are fairly cheap ones. They're not the cheapest ones you can get, but these were $3.99 in euros, so feel free to calculate for yourself. Normally you spend money on these things for the quality of the steel and the amount of teeth per inch. Of course, we're not really interested in the amount of teeth per inch, the less the better. Saves my blades and saws and files. So here I have 18 teeth per inch. They call it bimetal. I'm not really sure what that means. It's some kind of alloy, but I'm not completely certain what the alloy is. These are 30 centimeters long. I can get 2 picks out of these, as you can see. Theoretically you could get 3 if you're careful, but I don't have the proper saws to actually do that. The metal's too hard to use a regular metal saw on, at least the ones that I have. So I just stick with making 2. This is a pack of 2, so I can get 4 picks out of this, and that cost me €4 for 4 picks, so that's not bad at all. I'll be using this piece which I've got here. It's exactly the same one, it's just from a pack that I've opened already. I made a pack for a friend of mine, so this is what's left. The process that I'm going to use is I'm going to copy one of the ones that I've already made. This is one that I made, and this is one that I've bought. So the one that I've made has the tape around it, but that's not really a big problem, and it's a pretty simple shape, so that shouldn't be difficult to make with the tools that I've got. It's just a regular hook. This one, on the other hand, is a bow guitar. It's going to be a little bit more difficult to make. Let's see if we can zoom in a little bit. There we go. It's going to be a little bit more difficult to make because it has some of the curves in it and some small negative angles which I'm going to have to get in. Once you see the tool I'm going to use for that later, it'll make a little bit more sense why this is more complicated. So what have I done? I've used my home printer to photocopy these. I just put them under the scanner, scanned them and printed them, and it leaves you with this. What I'm going to do with this is I'm going to cut them out with a pair of scissors, and then I'm actually just going to glue them onto here. The glue I'll be using is just regular, basically Pritt stick. A very simple glue. It probably will let loose as soon as the blade gets warm, but that's not a problem because by that time I'll know what I'm doing and the curve I'm looking for. So I just kind of keep flattening it out, maybe add a little bit more glue as I go along if it's necessary. But you'll see that when we start filming it, and it shouldn't be an issue. What else am I going to need here? When we start finishing up, I've got some sandpaper. I've got everything from 100 all the way up to 2500. 2500 is very fine. We won't be needing that. I'll probably work up from probably about 240 up to 600, maybe 800. But I think 600 normally does the job. What else have we got? Well, we've got a pair of scissors just to cut these out. We've got the glue, and we're going to be using a grinder, which means I've got some eye protection and some ear protection. We might need this if my fingers start getting close to the grinder. I'll use it just to stabilize and to hold so I can get closer, but we'll see if that's necessary. And I also have some small needle files, and I'll be using these files probably for the bow guitar, just to get into some of these tighter angles that I can't get into with the grinder, and it's the metal is too hard to be shaping with sandpaper. I've just cut out the shape of the picks and glued them onto the saw. What I've decided to do is combine the two into one pick. I'm not sure if this is practical, but we'll see how it is once we've finished it, and we'll give it a go. Here it is, and now we're ready to start grinding. Here's the grinder I'm going to be using. It's a relatively small one, but it does the job. I've got one coarse stone and one pretty fine stone. I've got hearing protection, eye protection. I've got the glue ready in case I need to glue a bit more on. It might happen that the heat causes the paper to let go, which is not a big problem. We'll just add a bit more glue and it'll be fine. Let's get started. turned out pretty well. The hook side of the pick is pretty much done. It needs smoothing out a little bit on the top and the bottom. It's difficult to do with a grinder, so we'll do that with a file. The Bogota side needs a little bit more work. As I explained earlier, the grinding stone can't quite get into all the little angles and corners, so we'll finish that up with some of the needle files. I'll give you a close-up of this for a moment, and then we'll move on to the vise, and I'll show you what we're going to do there. So you can see the paper is still on top. I re-glued it a few times. But I've traced the paper. You can see a little bit of white here and there where I still need to take some off. And the Bogota side, as I explained, I got pretty close to the edge there, but it could do with a little bit more work just to get the shape right, and we'll finish off with the files. I've set up the desk with the vise. I've got a block on there just to protect the desk a bit. The pick has been put into the vise. I'm going to be having to use these very small files that I have here. I did buy them for this to get into the small corners, but that means I didn't spend any money on big files. So for these larger areas, I'm just going to have to use this very small one. It's not ideal, but it does work, and I didn't really want to spend much more money since I wanted to really do this on a budget to start with. So what I'm going to do is just smooth out this top large part here. I'm going to do the inside then, and then I'm going to spend some time on the Bogota with the different shapes of files. So let's see how this works. Just finishing up. I think I'm quite happy with this now. There's no sharp edges, no sharp tops, and it seems deep enough to actually work. We'll go and compare it with the other one in a second and see what we got. It's not perfectly symmetrical, but it's really not so bad. I think it might actually work. Next part is sanding down. I'm going to sand the top and the bottom. It's still got the paper on it. We're going to sand it down to a nice mirror finish, and we're also going to smooth the edges since the edges are still square at the moment. If I was to do that on the grinder, I'll take away too much material, so I'm going to do it with the sandpaper. And I'm going to start with 240 and work up to about 600 grit. I'm going to start sanding with the 100 just to get the paper off. I'll peel as much off as I can at the moment, but it's on there pretty good. The glue doesn't stick when you want it to, but as soon as you're done with it, it seems to really want to sit. So, we'll take most of that off with the 100 grit, and then we'll move on to the 240. here's a comparison of the two bow guitars. The top one is the one I bought, the bottom one is the one I'm making. At the moment the material is still a bit thicker on the bottom one. The differences between the peaks and the bottoms are a little bit too shallow, so I'm going to deepen them out a bit with a file and see if we can get a nice effective bow guitar out of that. I've refiled it. It's much better now. We're almost done. I've put this up to a 400 grit shine. What I'm going to do now is just go over it again with the 240 since I've refiled this one. It's pretty rough again. 240 up to 400, and one of the things I'm going to do is wrap the 400 around this needle file and then use that as a guide just to get around the tighter corners. Once that's done, it'll be finished and we'll try it out. So here we are with the finished pick. On one side we've got the medium hook, on the other side the bow guitar. There's only one real way to try this, and that's to pick a lock, so let's see how far we get. Tension wrench is homemade, made out of a windscreen wiper. And go bottom of the keyway. This is an ABUS 6530 lock. I've opened this one before. It's one of the few I have, so honestly I don't have much choice at the moment, which is a shame. And there we go. So the medium hook works. Let's try the rake next. Next up we're going to try the raking. I'm not very good with the bow guitar rake yet, I haven't got much experience with it. But the combination of these two is supposed to get the lock open, so I'm going to do exactly that. I'm going to use the rake to get a false set, and then I'm going to use the medium hook to finish it off if we don't open it with the rake. I'm using a different tension wrench this time. I'm using one again in the bottom of the keyway, but a slightly deeper one. Let's see if we can get a false set with the rake. Jiggle it around. Fits nicely, there we go, it's a nice deep false set. Pin 2 is good. Pin 3's, and there we go. So, as a combination they work really well. It's slightly larger than an average pick. Let's say this is the bow guitar from the regular series. It's not huge, it'll fit in some packs, it won't fit in my own little pack here that I've got. But it's a pretty effective little pick, and it's easy to make. The whole thing took me about an hour and a half. I did have some delay in the middle, got some stuff to do in the background, you might be able to hear it. So the longest time is sanding, and sanding you can do that for as long as you want. I only went up to 400 here, and I really didn't spend much time on a 400, but I got a pretty smooth result. Normally I'd spend a bit more time on the bow guitar to make it a little bit smoother, but it's okay for now. So on the whole, that was it. You should be able to do it in about an hour with a bit of practice, but we've basically made 2 picks here in 1.5 hours. Cost was next to nothing if you have the tools already. The file set I bought was about €6, and the sander that I have, or the grinder I have, is a bit more expensive, but then again, it's something that you might already have, and if you don't have it, then you could buy some larger files and use the large files to get the shape that you need. Any questions? And I'll be happy to answer.